Everyone, welcome. We'll give everyone a few minutes to log on.
Hi. Am I the first panelist here?
Sure.
Oh boy, I feel like I should not be wearing a hoodie and I should be a little more dressed up instead of just a pony hoodie.
I have my resist shirt on, so.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, I've got time, so maybe I'll change between great. Awesome. Oh, we're already on. Hello. Okay, we're live.
We're live.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you, Deborah. This is called the never-ending election look right here.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
You know, we're all in Zoom quarantine looks. It's all good. So
it's totally true. It's true.
See, we have Nick fixing his hair.
I mean, you're all just lucky I did laundry in the last week. So.
Hey, it's 2020. You know.
That's right. That's right. Oh goodness. Well, thanks for having me, Jamie and Erin.
Yeah. Hi, Marissa. Marissa's with Fair Fight, so thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, great to be here.
And we have Alyssa from Team Warnock. So.
And we have 80 people and counting who've joined so far, and we had 500 registrations for this call, which was our max. So it'll be you know, we probably won't get all 500, but we'll have a pretty full call here. So it's great because this is a great brain trust of people to listen to and learn from here. So
I'm just excited to see Martha Shockey.
How are you?
Martha's one of
Hey,
my
Martha.
gurus. It's like whatever Martha says, I do right now. So
it's a good rule of thumb.
You know,
I'll try to use my power for good and not evil.
You know, the people
already
in
doing it.
Georgia, I mean, we got to all give them a big round of applause, right? Because they've just gone through this huge election and now they are just hitting the ground running. The demands on their time is so high. It's just been insane. So big round of applause to all the Georgia people because wow.
Yep, seriously.
And I know how tired they all are. So.
Yeah, this is, you know, as I was saying to several people today that, you know, we expected that we'd be in one runoff, but I'm not sure that we were completely sure that we'd be in 3. And so, boy, it was a quick turnaround, to say the least. Yeah.
And while we're kind of waiting for everyone to join, you know, there are 3 races in Georgia, 3 statewide races. So, Martha, do you want to do a quick summary of the third, which is Daniel Blackman?
Yeah, so Daniel Blackman is running for Public Service Commission, and it is the first time that we've had a viable candidate for that race in many, many years. And it's a very consequential race for everyone, but particularly for working people, because Georgia Power has had a main line to our pocketbooks for several decades, and Daniel stands to at least stand in the way of that. He would be the first Black person elected to that board ever. There was one gentleman who had been appointed to finish out someone else's term, but Daniel would be the first elected. So that is also just an amazing opportunity for us. And also just in terms of climate, broadband, you know, right now, so many children don't have access to internet service, and so they're not able to go to school, you know, consistently. And that is another thing that he will be addressing. So it's really a very important race that has just really far-reaching possibilities for us. So very excited about him running. Plus, he's always been a really wonderful activist. He's been with us, working with us for the last 4 years, before this even became a part of what he might run. So it's really exciting.
I'm sorry, Martha, I did not mean to cut you off.
Okay.
I was just going to say, Jamie, I don't know if you mentioned Deborah Gonzalez already.
I have not.
Okay, great. Well, just want to, for folks who don't know me, I'm the Director of Partnerships and Political Engagement with Vote Pro Choice. We love all of you. I've seen many of you on many other Zooms, and so thank you. But Deborah Gonzalez is a fantastic woman who is running for a judicial prosecutorial seat in a runoff, excuse me, not a runoff, special election. And she's a fantastic candidate who has stood up for reproductive rights and justice, and we're very excited to support her. But because, like Daniel Blackman's race, it's not Warnock or Ossoff, which we gotta win, listen, not diminishing at all, but we gotta win all of these seats. So she's another candidate that I wanna encourage folks to check out and support. Because her race just isn't getting the attention. And so she's actually, her election is in December. So there's that need again to get folks to the polls on a day that is not the Georgia Senate runoff. So just a shout out for Deborah Gonzalez.
Thanks for that. So I think, you know, we're 4 minutes in. People will continue to trickle in, but to be fair to people's schedules, I think we should probably just go ahead and get rolling. I'm Nick Knutson. I'm the Executive Director of Demcast. We're a 501c4 nonprofit organization focused on lifting the voices of grassroots activists and making sure that we have blue wins all over the country. So Demcast is super excited to host this call, which features folks from the ground in Georgia. And we want to pretty much just turn over to them. I know a lot of people who are on this call right now may have been on other Georgia calls recently. This one is a little bit different, we think, because we're really focusing specifically on messaging and what messaging is going to help move these Warnock and Ossoff forward, and what messaging may not be quite so helpful. And we've got 200 people on right now. I expect it to fill up past 400 in the next few minutes. And a lot of the people who are on are super users on various social media platforms, from Twitter to Facebook to Instagram, and more. And so some good heavy hitters in here. The people on this call can do some serious damage in a good way or in a bad way if we're not saying the right stuff. So before we jump over, I'm going to drop something in chat right now. It's it looks like Jamie already shared it, but it's a shared Google Doc that just has some really good links to mobilize opportunities with the campaigns and with key organizations in the state. Donate links, links to all the different Georgia-based organizations that are going to be making the difference here in the last month. So with that, I think we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. I believe we're going to start with the folks from the OSOF campaign. And so I think that's Elias Duncan. Welcome, Elias. And go ahead and take it away and give us your take on messaging.
Hey, Nick, and hello, everyone watching. Thank you guys for all that you're doing. I can't stress enough, and I think all of you know how important it is that we have a really strong coalition of folks online that are supporting our movement in Georgia and who are doing the good work of spreading voting information. So again, thank you for all you're doing. The big thing that I will say first and foremost for our team and our operation online is sharing voting information. We have enough people who are paying attention to this race, and we have plenty of engagement. We have loads of people who want to volunteer, but the name of the game is turnout, and we need people to know when to vote, when to register, how to vote. We just need them to vote. Something that the Biden team and the Biden coalition did really well at the end of the general election was creating this movement about voting. And you saw a lot of people who maybe looked at it or blew it off before taking it really seriously and finding really creative ways to share information about voting, whether it was like Gen Zers on TikTok creating videos on like voting by mail, or like different surrogates or activists who weren't necessarily as plugged in, just sharing and like getting people to vote. And that's essentially what we want to create on the ground here in Georgia. Obviously, the circumstances of this election are pretty unordinary. So the voting registration deadline is different. The early voting time is different. And the election is on January 5th after a huge holiday season where people like don't really want to pay attention to politics. So the more that y'all can do, and we will be sharing resources in the next week as we put together a new toolkit and action center, but the more that you guys can do to share voting information on your platforms and to the folks that you know in Georgia would be great. Our team will be rolling out a larger relational program that would be great if you guys could either join or share with folks in your networks to join, that will allow you to reach out to the folks that you know in Georgia, that maybe you don't know who are in Georgia but live in Georgia, and make sure that they have information on John and Warnock, not only voting information, but useful bio information that might persuade them. So more information to come, and thank you for all of the work y'all are doing.
Thank you so much, Elias. We are definitely excited, of course, about John. I think he's a great candidate, so we're very happy to support him however we can. Next up, we have Alyssa with Reverend Warnock's campaign. So excited to have you join and tell us how we can help him.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for having me. Really excited to be here. As some of you might know, I'm relatively new to the Warnock campaign. I was working on the Texas Senate race, and then I had about 2 weeks to sleep, and then I'm right back in it again. So we really appreciate everybody who is keeping up the energy, keeping up the fight. It's really, really important right now, and I know people are tired and holidays stress is coming, so really just appreciate everyone who is sticking in it to help us win these races. So Elias said many of the same things that I'm probably going to say right now. Is really the big thing is reaching out to voters and reminding them about the big dates that are coming up. It sounds kind of mundane, but if you think about it, we spent the last several months telling people all of the dates that they need for November, and runoff elections are unusual. It's not sticking in people's heads the same way that like a November election day would. And like Elias said, it's a very strange season. We've got a lot of holidays that are going to be interrupting the overall season, and are also going to be interrupting some of the early vote days. So it's really important to get people to know what dates to be aware of and to plan ahead, make a a plan to vote and do it as early as possible. A couple of the things that I'll mention, there is a new voter registration deadline that is going to be December 7th. So if you are someone who has an audience with a lot of young teens, if you were not old enough to vote in the November election, if you are turning 18 before January 5th, you are eligible to vote in the runoff election. So there's a whole new set of eligible voters that we need to get registered to vote. We have early voting beginning in December, on December 14th. So getting people to plan ahead to vote early is going to be really important because many of these early voting locations are going to be closed for Christmas. So that takes some time out. So make a plan, vote early. The other thing as well that we're emphasizing to folks is apply for your absentee ballot and apply for it right now. Like right now is when to do it. So if you're looking for something to do in the next couple of weeks, that's really a good message to push. On our end, on Team Warnock, we have votewarnock.com, which is sort of our one-stop voter resource center that takes people to wherever they need to go, whether it's register to vote, request an absentee ballot, make a plan to vote early in person, or vote in person on January 5th. In the weeks to come, there's going to be more information and resources from us about that sort of voter education of making sure that we're getting people out to vote. But that is really what is critical for us right now, just making sure everybody knows and plans ahead to vote. Turnout, as Elias said, is the game right now. You know, it's everybody's making plans for holidays and things like that. We need to get them to also be thinking about voting in the midst of all of this. So thank you all so much. Really excited to be here and really, really grateful for everything that you all are doing.
Thank you so much. I think we have some questions that, maybe you would have the answer to, or Elias. We know that people can request their absentee ballot right now. Is it continue to be a no excuse absentee ballot, or do they need to have things that they have to prove to qualify for the absentee?
No, anyone can apply for an absentee ballot.
Okay. And when would you say the last kind of the cutoff for, going away from absentee and then planning an early vote should be?
Don't quote me on this, but I don't think there, and Alyssa might know, I don't think there actually is a formal cutoff, and I don't know, our team doesn't have a advised date, but I would say it's just like common sense. And, you have to request your absentee ballot, you have to get it, and you have to mail it back. So after a certain point, it just doesn't make sense to mail it back, and you might want to drop it off at a drop box. Early voting, if you're in Georgia and you feel safe doing it, is like a really, really good option, and it's super easy too. Depending on what county you live in, there's loads of dates to do it. So that's also a really good option if you're feeling like, oh, maybe it's too late and I don't know if I can mail it back, etc. I haven't gotten it yet. You can just vote early.
Yeah, I would also say that really the messaging for right now is just request it now. I think, we're still trying to figure out exactly what that date is going to be. But for right now, the big thing is request it now, fill it in as soon as you get it, and return it as soon as possible. Of just keep driving that urgency right now for it.
Mm-hmm. And are there drop boxes in a lot of locations in Georgia?
I think almost every county has drop boxes. I'm not positive that everyone does, and it's going to be different for the runoff election, so I can't say for sure. But for the most part, each county will have drop boxes. And you can drop off your ballot in most counties up until 7 p.m. The day of the election, which is always good to know. So if you got your ballot in the day before the election, you can still drop it off. I would double check with your county registrar, and the Secretary of State will be updating the early voting site soon, where you can just put in your county and specific information for your county will come up. They haven't launched it yet, but I would always check with your county registrar because it'll be up to them.
Yeah, I'll clarify. We're still waiting for a lot of information on that kind of stuff. And I'm sure Elias has a resource as well. We'll update votewarnock.com as we get that information, but a lot of those details we're still waiting to get.
Okay, great. Let's see. A couple other questions I think they said. It looks like one of our Georgia captains is saying that drop boxes will be the same as in the primary election, the general election that was passed this morning. So that's great news. And I would still just, iwillvote.com will get you to the information that you need for Georgia.
Yeah, and there are tons of resources for voting, and all of them, whether it's the Reverend's site or our site or iwillvote.com, if they're run by these organizations that you trust, then they'll be good. And the Secretary of State is always a good fallback too. That's where the official information lives. But for anything specific, like your polling location or a drop box, you should always check with your county because they do control that.
Gotcha. And can anybody drop off the ballot?
I saw that question. I'm not sure about that. I would assume not, but I'm sure that is on the Secretary of State's website.
All right, sounds good. Something I think we're going to address maybe later on, but also I don't know if you guys want to weigh on this. There's a lot of information. We've noticed a little uptick in, at least on Twitter, about voters being purged since the general election off of the voter rolls. Have you guys actually seen any information that is true, that's true, or is this just concerns?
Because it's so new, I don't think our team has any official information on it. So we have the same information that y'all are working off of.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, if it was something like that, we would make sure to get information out there to counteract that.
Okay.
Yeah, same. And you can always go to the Georgia Secretary of State's website and check your voter registration at any time. So if you have concerns, do that, but we haven't seen anything.
Okay.
It's always good if any of y'all are tweeting register to vote. You can also say check your voter registration.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt, especially in a state like Georgia, to be doing that.
Absolutely. All right. Jamie, we have any other questions we need to?
Somebody was just curious about how the list for phone banking is chosen. Because of course, anytime you phone bank, there's some, wrong numbers, disconnected numbers. So I know from experience, numbers are only as good as what was given when they registered to vote. Things change, but if you guys can kind of answer about what list who you guys are calling right now.
I don't have any specific information about that. It's usually pulled from the voter file. So the information in there is dependent on, if someone's moved, if the line's been disconnected. Obviously, if you are phone banking, there's always going to be options as you're phone banking to mark down any issues with any numbers that you're having. Really important to fill that information out, which helps us continue to refine these lists, make sure that we are reaching the people that we want to be reaching.
I have the same answer.
And somebody
And so the last question is there more of a why message to turn attention back to this election? So kind of really more of a strategic messaging on why this is important. How we really get people's attention. Is there a message in Georgia that you guys are focusing on? Whether it's flipping the Senate, keeping that kind of stuff local. So what's the kind of message besides just getting out the vote that you guys want people to be focusing on?
I think that those 2 points are one and the same. So flipping the Senate is obviously like a huge stake, but what it means to Georgians' healthcare is pretty local. So pointing back to Republicans trying to repeal the ACA and what that will do to Georgians with pre-existing conditions. Whatever it is, like whatever the policy point is, like you can bring it back and make it localized. But top line, like yes, taking back the Senate so we can protect our healthcare, so we can pass things like the Voting Rights Act and a new Civil Rights Act. So we can make sure that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have the tools they need to respond to the pandemic. All of that stuff is really good, and I think is definitely a nationalized message that it always hits home.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a ton of attention on both Georgia Senate races. So I think people are very aware and are paying attention and are stepping up to help in a big way. Very similar to what Elias said. For us, it's focus on the stakes, focus on, you know, what's really at stake in these elections, protecting healthcare, passing COVID relief. I think one message that's worked very well for us lately has been Kelly Loeffler left the Senate for Thanksgiving and there's no COVID relief, and families are going home and wondering how they're going to put food on the table this Thanksgiving, and she's just gone, absent. So I think for us, really focusing on what is at stake in this election and really focus on those issues that really matter to folks right now. That works well.
I think everyone's doing, for the most part, like folks online who are wanting to support have been doing a really good job on honing in on that message.
Yeah.
Great. And I did see questions about were there going to be free rides to the polls, and I want to drop something in the chat that it looks like Plus One Vote has a campaign for providing free Lyft to the polls. So I think they're planning on extending that for the special election as well. Okay. Well, any other things? I know you guys are busy and we appreciate your time so much. Is there anything else you guys want to share before we move on?
Just really, really grateful for everything that you all are doing. Thank you so much.
And like Alyssa said, ask people to request their absentee ballots right now. The voter registration deadline is December 7th, and early voting starts December 14th. And obviously election day is January 5th. But the earlier they can vote, the better.
All right, great. Jamie, I think you're up.
Well, next we have Marissa Pyle, who is with Fair Fight. Everyone knows the amazing work that Fair Fight's been doing, especially around voter protection. And so Marissa might be the good one to answer the questions about these videos we're seeing about people getting purged from the rolls, and what we can do to support organizations like Fair Fight.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here, glad that so many people want to get involved in Georgia. It's always wonderful to see the confirmation of what we've known for a very long time, which is that Georgia is a battleground state and that voters vote when we invest in them and when we take the time to talk to them. So the folks before me told you what to say. I'm going to focus on what not to say, just to keep that straight, particularly on disinformation, how to avoid it, and why it is so important, especially in such a high stakes election as we have in Georgia right now. Because I know the eyes of the nation are on Georgia. We are the state that determines it all. And it's very important to be cognizant of the weight that carries, particularly with the voters that we're reaching out to and the voters that we're talking to. And so the number one thing to remember is that disinformation, even if it comes from well-meaning sources, even if it has good intent at heart, is very harmful. The number one best thing you can do to make sure that you're always sharing good information with your networks, with your social media profiles, with the people in your circles and with voters in Georgia is to share share information from trusted sources, from organizations on the ground in Georgia who interact with voters, who do voter protection in the state of Georgia, and who have been doing this work, because it is so, so important that voters have the accurate information, the information they need at the moment that they need it. So just as a precursor to all of this, I wanna go into just like a 30-second overview of why avoiding disinformation is so important. The psychology degree in me loves talking about it, because the way disinformation works is it is attractive to us. Our brains are naturally attracted to things that provoke powerful emotions, be that anger, be it fear. Those are ones that we are particularly susceptible to, and that makes an impression. We are more likely to remember that. And that is why disinformation is usually tailored to be things that are extreme, that provoke a reaction in you. That is by design. And so the number one most important thing is that the more people that see disinformation, even if it's people that know it's false, the more it spreads. Because even if they don't necessarily, you may not believe it. You may see a tweet and go like, I know that that's not credible. But if you retweet it, even if you're saying like, oh, look how ridiculous this is, there is somebody in your circle that will see it. And even if they don't believe it, there's a seed of doubt that's sowed in the back of their mind, because it will make an impression and it sticks. And so the number one thing that you can do is make sure that you are never, never amplifying it. Even to mock it, especially not to say like, is this true? If you have time to retweet it, you have time to Google it. So just make sure that you are never consciously spreading information that you know not to be credible. It also means that when you see something that looks, bad or something that provokes that kind of strong reaction, check, especially if it's related to voting, check with voting rights organizations. See if organizations like Fair Fight, like Black Voters Matter, New Georgia Project especially, are some of the really good ones in Georgia. See if we have said anything about it. If there is something going on, I promise you, we are the first ones to find it. And see if we have said anything before amplifying it. Right now, there is false information spreading about Georgia elections. And I want to be very clear. I'm going to say this. I want you to repeat it to yourselves, and then I'm going to repeat it again for emphasis. It is against federal law to purge voters within 90 days of a federal election. It is against federal law to purge voters within 90 days of a federal election. We always encourage voters to check their voter registration status. And if anybody has any concerns, they should call the Voter Protection Hotline, which I will say this number a bunch. You can find it on pretty much everybody's social media in Georgia. It is 888-730-5816. Once more, just for emphasis, it is against federal law to purge voters within 90 days of an election. But yeah, the core message that I have is that organizations on the ground know what we're doing. We know the folks that we're talking to, we know the system that we work in, and we are constantly working to make sure that voters have the most up-to-date information. So if you see us talking about something in a certain way, or if you see us not talking about something, that is a deliberate choice that we have made to act in the best interest of voters. And please, we ask that you follow that lead, because the stakes here are incredibly, incredibly high. Disinformation can dissuade people from voting. It can, if folks decide that something is too difficult or that they may not be able to do it, especially for folks who are on the fence about whether to vote at all, they may stay home. So the stakes here are incredibly high. And just like some good steps to always follow is don't amplify it. This includes don't retweet the president, even if you're retweeting the president to mock him, because it helps spread his message. We have seen that spread, especially in the weeks leading up to and the weeks immediately after the election, and we don't need to help it. We also need to be very cognizant, like if you have, I said it before, if you have time to post something asking if it's accurate, you have time to check if it's accurate, because we really need to make sure the onus should not be on us. Let me be clear. We should be able to trust our government to give us good information about voting. We should be able to trust our federal government to not spread fear-mongering. But the system that we live in, it is up to us to make sure that we are providing good information and not spreading this misinformation and this fear-mongering. And with that, like I said, follow the leads of organizations that are on the ground. Because not only are we working within a system that we know, but like also rapid response things come up. And sometimes we may need to pivot to something new, and we may need to do it fast to make sure that voters have that information. So if you see that pivot, please try to signal boost that information as well. And no matter which organization in Georgia it comes from, there are a ton of wonderful organizations on the ground that are doing this important work. And by doing that, you also uplift pro-voting narratives. You can always spread information about how to vote, to break down the barriers in people's minds, to make it accessible, and resources for them to do that. So a good example of this would be like, voting by mail is safe and reliable. To find out more information and find out how to request your ballot, you can go to peachvote.com. Easy tells voters that it is accessible for them to do and provides an immediate resource for them to do it. That is, it's the number one way that we get people to vote is we give them the resources to do so. And with that, why you shouldn't spread things if you see them on social media just in case they're true, or just in case if you want to warn voters about it, even if you're not sure if it's accurate. Sometimes when that isn't accurate, it can have really impactful consequences. It can scare people. It scares people needlessly, and it also can sow doubt in the system. And then that also means that the organizations that are doing this voter education and this voter engagement on the ground, we have to take our resources away from doing that GOTV work to push back on these narratives, to make sure that voters have the right information. And especially now, you all know the stakes are incredibly high. We have a very abbreviated time frame, and we have to do everything as fast as we can. So making sure that our resources are spent on educating voters and not fighting disinformation accidentally is very important. Just some quick examples of things that aren't helpful fundamentally right now is like what ifs of the president, like what he will or will not do. I'm going to be honest, nobody knows what he's going to do. Nobody can predict that. And it doesn't help really at this point. What's going to happen is going to happen. We have seen that his legal strategy has not worked, if you can call it that. And we need to let it play out. And coming up with these conspiracy theories, or like the things that keep you awake at night at 3 a.m., they keep you awake. They'll keep other people awake too. There's no need to put them on Twitter. Unverified information. Unverified information specifically about like election administration, so like registration, voter purges, machines, anything like that. There's no need, unless organizations are raising the flag, to do something that could sow doubt in the system, because voters' trust right now is incredibly fragile. We have been through quite a year. And so we need to make sure that we're sticking to really accurate and really up-to-date information. With that, also don't share things that are out of date. Things change fast. Georgia's presidential primary was moved 2 different times, so in 3 months. So things are changing very fast. It is very fluid. And so please make sure that you're sharing up-to-date information. And then also, like, particularly just because there's so many folks from out of state, incorrect terminology, things change from state to state. So I've seen some things like saying that people need to re-register when they mean re-request your ballot, just because terminology differs from state to state. As much as you can, please take the time to verify that, because again, it scares people, it confuses people, and we need to make sure it's accurate right now. And then also repeating any right-wing conspiracies about fraud or whatever they have come up with at this time. Their 58th new lawsuit that is still not going to work them and help them win Michigan. Anything like that is not worth your time amplifying. So in terms of things to do, amplify organizations on the ground. I'm going to say Fair Fight because that is my employer, but organizations like Black Voters Matter, organizations like the Georgia NAACP, the New Georgia Project, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, all of these are wonderful organizations that work to empower voters and to educate them within the state of Georgia. And then also ways for voters to vote and request their ballots. Everybody should request their ballot right now if they plan to vote by mail. Ballots have begun to be sent out, started arriving, so folks should do that soon so they can return it and get it in the mail or in a drop box as soon as possible. And then also voter protection hotlines. I said this before, I will say it again. The Georgia Voter Protection Hotline is 888-730-5816. Or if you're a 501c3 or a nonpartisan organization, you can share the 866 Our Vote hotline that is run by lawyers. They also provide really good information for voters on the ground. And then the number one thing for messaging is focus on local issues. Connect with people on what they care about. If you're texting somebody who lives in rural Georgia, the thing that they care most about may not be getting rid of Mitch McConnell. In fact, it probably isn't. The number one issue for voters in Georgia is healthcare, as it is, I'm sure, for voters all over the country. Connect with them on what matters to them, speak to them on the issues that affect their daily lives, and that is the way to connect with people everywhere, not just in Georgia. And then just to close it out, if you would like to get involved with Fair Fight, we have a ton of upcoming voter education events. All of our events are virtual. I believe all of our text banks are full because the entire country is just is chilling in Georgia until January 5th. But we have plenty of phone banks that we will be adding in the next couple of days. You can go to mobilize.us/fairfight to see all of our events, and you can just follow that page for more as they get added. But yeah, thank you all so much for having me, and I hope that this was helpful for folks to share.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Marissa? All right, well, it seems like we don't have any questions. So, all right, well, thank you so much. That was incredibly helpful. We've been trying to tell people for a long time that Mitch McConnell is not a Georgia issue. So it's nice to have that reaffirmed. So we do have one. Are there any specific hashtags that you guys recommend using?
I mean, the one that comes to mind immediately is #GAPoll, POL, because that's just like our generic all things Georgia hashtag that things just get added to.
All right, well, thank you so much. No, Georgia does not have Medicaid expansion. And that is actually, you'll see that a lot. That is an issue that a lot of people talk about in Georgia. It's what, 550,000 people don't have access to healthcare because of that? Was I right on that number? Is it a problem calling with an out-of-state phone number?
I mean, honestly, as long as you're providing good information, I don't necessarily think that Georgians are more wary of out-of-state callers than anybody from any other state. As long as you're friendly, I don't think it's an issue.
All right, well, next up we have Martha. She is with the Indivisible Georgia Coalition. I have known Martha for, I think, 3 years now. So it has been a pleasure to work with her. So I will turn it over to Martha.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. And thank you for being interested in Georgia. Of course, these Senate races are important to all of us. But it is particularly of interest to us for all of the reasons that we know, as well as these other down ballot races that will have great consequence for working Georgians. One of the things that I want to address is, be sure, again, to check with local organizations and local news outlets to find out more about what's going on. There's some information out today about what happened at the State Board of Elections meeting this morning. And it's really important that we look at the local newspaper, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, to get the facts correct. There was discussion, yes, about changing some of the rules about who's eligible to vote and who should be registered to vote, but they finally determined that actually they already had those laws on the books. So please, if you see that kind of information out there that they're requiring you to own a car or something like that, that's just not true. It's not that they didn't discuss it, but it's not true. They didn't pass it. So please be sure to check with local news sources and one of the local organizations, because if you do not see it on our news feed, on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever, then that is, as Marissa said, a clue that it's not an issue. So that's one thing. And then I'm going to post here a resource that is a really good one for those of you who are doing phone banking, because it is written for a casual user of information from Georgia on voting. And we developed this guide because we had so many questions coming into our inboxes from everyday people who had questions about voting. Voting shouldn't be this hard, but in Georgia, it's very complicated. And so we decided that we needed to develop a guide to help people with that. And a number of people who've done phone banking into Georgia have found it useful. We answer questions like, you know, what kind of ID do I need? How do I know what to do if I look at my voter page and find out that I'm inactive? So those are interesting articles that our team, Derek Spransey and Margaret Arnett, put together. Please bookmark that if you're working in Georgia at all. And if we don't have the answer in there, then ask us and we'll find the answer for you. So that's really easy. I saw that there were some questions about when to, how late can you get an absentee ballot? And so what we recommend is no less than 10 days, 10 working days. The Secretary of State's office will say you can order it up until Friday before the election. That's entirely too close. We want to make sure that, given that there are slowdowns with the post office, mix in the holidays and potential for rising COVID-19 numbers, that you order your ballot well in advance to be sure to get it in time. And if you do not get your ballot in time, then make plans to go in person. Early voting starts in mid-December, so you have plenty of time to get to the polling locations, to early voting locations, to cast your vote in person. And most of the polling locations in Georgia are doing a really good job with personal protective equipment for their poll workers. And so it's not a totally unsafe thing to do. We would prefer that people vote absentee if they can, but we know that that's not an option for everyone. Drop boxes will probably stay the same, and you can look at various websites in Georgia fairly soon to confirm those locations. I know that the Democratic Party has on their voter protection website a list of drop boxes. New Georgia Project, All Voting is Local. We use their sites on our Georgia Voter Guide, so we basically copy what they do. And those sites are going to remain open as far as we know. If you have questions, again, be sure to ask folks on the ground. And what I would say in terms of messaging is to lift up the good work that's being done here. We had massive turnouts for voting during the last cycle, and that is really the message that we want. You know, Georgians turned out, and we want to amplify that, and that you can do it again, and that your voice was heard and your vote was counted. You know, that's the overall message that we want to get out, is that yes, we have some issues in Georgia, but this election, because of all of the work that all of us have been doing on the ground here, we were able to build out a massive team of people who were there to help people vote and make sure that their vote was counted. So please be sure to amplify that message. And further, you know, take your lead from those Black-led organizations, because, you know, there are a lot of things that those of us who are white just simply cannot see. And we want to make sure that any messaging that we put out is messaging that comes straight from the experience of Black and brown people in Georgia, because their experience is the experience that we need to pay attention to and that we need to learn from. So thank you so much for working in Georgia, for being here, and for all of your goodwill, and yes, for your donation dollars. We're really, really grateful for that. The amount of dark money that's pouring into the state is immense, and your help with those donations is going to make all of the difference. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Martha. Do we have any questions for her? Looks like she answered them all. Well, so next up we have Julie Lynn and Aaron, and they actually ran a disinformation response team for about 10 days after the election. And we are seeing a ton of disinformation out of Georgia right now, whether it's from, you know, those voting purges to the attacks on the Reverend from the Loeffler campaign. And so there is a good way and a bad way to handle disinformation. So we will let those two take it away and talk about how to combat disinformation.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. And thanks so much for participating in the election week war room as well. We really appreciated having the Demcast team be a part of it. Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Strauss-Garcia. My background's in digital strategy and Democratic campaigns. I was the disinformation project manager at Democrats.com this cycle. And in that role, I was coordinating our disinformation initiatives across Democrats.com's channels and platforms. And we also work closely with the Women's March on their Digital Defenders program. Julie Lynn, do you want to quickly introduce yourself? And I'll share our slides real quick.
Yeah, hi everyone, Julie Lynn Gibbons. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Political Engagement for Vote Pro Choice. Many of you used our voter guide this year. Thank you so much for doing that. My background is also in progressive issue campaigns and Democratic campaigns. So Aaron is pulling up the slides. Yes, he and I were part of a core team of folks that put together this war room. We're gonna quickly, because we know we're short on time, walk you through it. Answer questions and also provide resources.
Jamie, I think the slide sharing is disabled on my end. Sorry.
But if we can't use the slides, we can wing it too. We're professionals.
I'm happy to just talk through as well. Just whatever you suggest, Jamie. I know we're short on time, but we can be fast. Oh, there we go. Great, sorry about that. So let me just full screen here. Great, so I just kind of want to walk this group briefly through our work at Democrats.com on counter right-wing disinformation during the election using our collaborative disinformation response system. None of what I'm describing is Georgia specific per se, but I think the way that this applies to Georgia is that you know, this is a process and methodology that's now been tested in several different settings. We know how to stand it up. We know how to run it. It works with messaging, and it works with progressive organizations that are doing content amplification online. So we are happy to be a part of that solution to plug in the right messages that many of the folks on this call have brought to Georgia's campaign, along with, you know, the processes to get those messages out to audiences to make a real difference in countering, you know, what we all know is just a terrifying new peak that we've reached in 2020. And the right's long-term strategy of investing in disinformation amplification infrastructure has really come to fruition as part of a coordinated assault on our election and our democracy this year. Much of this disinformation looks top-down to us, but it's actually cyclical too, with groups like QAnon and Project Veritas and other fringe bad actors driving their wild conspiracy theories from far right-wing channels through the right-wing media, such as Breitbart and Fox News, all the way to the mainstream. And we all know how damaging and distracting this can be to our campaigns and our causes. And I definitely want to underscore everything that Marissa said. That's like, we are 100% on the do not engage with disinformation online, do not share it, do not comment to debunk disinformation. The answer is in positive fact-based messages from trusted sources. And we want you to amplify those trusted sources on the ground and trust their messaging, right? Counter disinformation in 2020, we have on our side really strong analysis, pinpointing the origins of threats, measuring their reach, understanding their trajectory. We have best practices, we have widespread awareness, don't engage with disinfo, everything we just said, lean into big picture narratives, which I'll get to a little bit more, and employ the sandwich method, where if you have to engage with disinformation or if you have to counter a disinformation lie, state your positive fact-based message, indirectly allude to the disinformation lie, and then restate your positive fact-based message. Many organizations lack strategic communications, professional firms running these kinds of resources and these kinds of messaging centers 24/7. And we also see, that we lack a lot of these coordinated response actions among many of the groups that share large audiences online in the progressive ecosystem. So that was the gap that we were trying to fill with the collaborative disinformation response system. Heidi Seek and Josh Berthum, Heidi Seek of Democrats.com and Josh Berthum of Swash Labs partnered earlier this year to develop CDRS. Heidi's background is in disaster planning and emergency response, and that led her to seek ways to apply ICS principles of disaster response to counter disinfo. And so this is a process and methodology that anyone can adopt, and it's grounded in ICS principles of unity of command and span of control and flexible modular organization, and using common terminology to really institute communications channels that can get these positive fact-based messages out to large audiences very quickly. And this is a slide that kind of just looks at the CDRS process. There's obviously a lot of documentation behind this, and we can share. We're happy to share our resources. They're on the last slide, and we can share the link to this presentation in the chat. But obviously, we are also happy to work with teams one-on-one to stand this up or to consult around those processes. But essentially, CDRS is a team structure. It's the watch commander, it's the content strategist, it's the partner strategist, it's the research analyst running a daily workflow of amplification, partner engagement, intelligence gathering and threat assessment, and mitigation and content strategy. And essentially, the response actions are not responding directly to the threats, but they are cognizant of the threats. They are response actions grounded in messaging and best practices that are daily amplifications. The Demcast tweet storms are a great example of what a great response action can look like. And if our partner ecosystem is coordinated in a way that everyone is able to receive these response actions grounded in real threat analysis and messaging best practices, then we can make a dent in many of the disinformation messages that are breaking through to mainstream audiences on the internet and that are really damaging the conversation. What we did during election week, I'm moving very quickly because I know we're running short on time and I just want to be mindful of that. What we did during election week is, we ran this process between October 30th and November 13th, We ran our Democrats.com CDRS to combat election-specific disinformation, and we ran it as a service for our internal channels, but also our partner organizations and other trusted sources. So this was a daily process with a Slack channel where we were releasing guidance every morning, a more thorough report in the afternoon with messaging guidelines, and also those response actions. Those what can folks online do to combat disinformation on a daily basis through fact-based messaging. And then we had a daily partner call where we discussed what was in the report, and we also had our content strategists from various partner organizations report out what they were seeing and what they were doing, and coordinating our response. And I think we saw some good movement, particularly around pushing the Count Every Vote hashtag, where we were able to get that messaging out very early, but even before Election Day. I remember that the Sunday before the election, when Jason Miller from Trump's campaign came out and said, the Democrats are going to try to win this back. We were able to, along with many others, mobilize around the Count Every Vote hashtag and messaging to the point where it was able to kind of break into the mainstream conversation as early as Monday. And already you saw a lot of awareness being driven around that in terms of, what the Republicans were going to be saying, and what the truth is that, it's just going to take us longer this year to count all the votes, and we need to make sure that every vote is counted. JL, is there anything you want to add as far as our daily process and partner strategy writ large?
Absolutely. And I just want to apologize if you hear a dog barking. My dog is letting me know she'd like to go to the bathroom, so my apologies. The election fatigue is real, even for our furry friends. So, I know a lot of this might seem kind of wonky, and there's been a comment or two about jargon. The important thing to note is the reason why this works, or a part of the reason why it works, is that because we take kind of the wonky stuff, the researchers, the analysts, etc., from the war room, and then what part of my role is as the partnership strategist. I'm just going to shut my door. I'm sorry. Lovely little dog, but is that I then share it. And at its peak, I was emailing roughly 3,500 people across the progressive and democratic movement with our messaging, our analysis, and then the messaging. And that is how stuff got out. So the Count Every Vote hashtag that Aaron just spoke about, we put together this letter to the press. It was shared in over 90 outlets. Within 4 hours, we had over 50 organizations from around the country sign on to it. It's exactly what a war room is, which is decisions are made, stuff's pushed out, and it's rapid response. Boom, boom, boom. So very, very important. And as this slide shows, we're creating a common messaging, like Aaron has said. The right is much better at taking one set of talking points and reiterating, and that's why talk radio works great for them. We're not as good as that. And so to be able to have that share messaging, and I know I see some of our folks from our Slack channel who joined us, they can share their bit if they want in the notes, but all of this contributed to the success. And this is how ultimately we fight disinformation, by both what Marissa said, which is check something before you share it, even if it's like, what? And then also pushing out our own messaging. So that part is very, very key and important.
Yeah, and somebody just shared Indivisible's Truth Brigade. I know that they are still running their Slack channel. We stood down our war room on November 13th due to funding, and the mission of it was really election week focused. But we are in active conversations about how we can participate and share our process with folks that are on the ground doing the work in Georgia. I would just say, obviously, I saw some of the comments about jargon. We're not getting into specific examples in this presentation because of the time constraints, and I know we're at time right now. I think the Count Every Vote hashtag is a great example of the kind of messaging that we can use to counter disinformation in a direct way while not engaging specifically with it. And there are certainly other examples. Just I would just say that when we were running this process daily, we were sharing a lot of the, kind of rationale behind the messaging. These are the specific disinformation threats we're seeing. We don't want to engage with them, but we're engaging with them, you know, with these specific messages, and to try to kind of connect those lines, which I know sometimes when we're doing a lot of these messaging calls can be a little bit hard for folks to realize.
And I'll just say one last thing. I put in the chat, we want to, as Aaron said, we want to get a CDRS war room together for the Georgia runoff. We are actually planning some calls with some groups and some funders who are interested. Considering the cost of everything else this year, it's not that expensive, but as we saw with the general election, it is critical. And we've already talked about how we're going to incorporate and work with the folks directly on the ground in Georgia. So please email me if this is something you're interested in or know somebody who might.
Would you guys have any advice on how to combat, like what Loeffler is saying about going after Warnock, you know, and anti-Semitism and all of that? Any advice for that?
I mean, I don't want to get ahead of you know, the experts on this call that are on the ground, you know, fighting those battles. But you know, our countering disinformation with objective reality is sort of at the core of the CDRS methodology. So speaking to, you know, who our candidates are, what their values are, what they've done, and you know, what these wins in Georgia will mean for the country and will mean for everyday families and will mean, you know, for bringing an end to the pandemic. I think that is, you know, the type of messaging that you see being effective to counter kind of specific attacks.
I would also just say, you know, if you're talking about disinformation, you know, follow the groups on the ground. They are putting out the most effective messaging out there. And if they're not engaging, there's a reason they're not engaging. And it really is like, you know, Michelle Obama said it best, when they go low, we got to go high. And oftentimes when they are posting crap, it truly is just crap. And so half the time it's just about not engaging. So, but again, please email me. Happy to share questions, presentations, answers, all of the things. And thank you so much, Jamie, Nick, and everyone, Lori, for having us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you guys. I did see there was a few more questions in the chat just about, and Martha and Marissa may be better to answer this. You know, are there too many out-of-state people going in to volunteer? You know, when does it become a bad thing?
I mean, I would say that this goes back to just following the lead of orgs on the ground, right? I think that I mean, obviously there's a ton of energy around this, rightfully so. That can absolutely be channeled productively because many hands make light work, but we just have to make sure that folks are plugging in to the existing structures, not trying to reinvent the wheel. And I think as long as folks are connecting with like an organizational home that works in Georgia, I think everybody is more than welcome. I would say just following the orgs and the campaigns and folks on the ground that are doing the work is the #1 thing.
I believe Jamie has a link in the document that she will be sending you all, and it has a link to a Google Doc for the C4 table, and you can sign up there and they will help you find a place to work in Georgia. And that is one of the best ways to plug into the work that's being done here. You know, it's one of those things, if they can use you, they will contact you. If they cannot, then you probably won't hear from them. So please don't be insulted if you don't hear from them. It's just that they're being kind of overwhelmed by your good intentions. And we appreciate it, but please don't take it personally or think that you know, people are just ignoring your kind offer of help.
Yeah, and we've kind of curated just a Mobilize link for all the groups that are on the ground in Georgia and kind of weeded out the out-of-state groups because, you know, you are seeing a lot of groups from, you know, out of state, whether it's, you know, Swing Left or Flip the West. And so we've really kind of focused on the groups that are on the ground in Georgia, because they know they have the messaging, they have the phone bank script, the text scripts that are going to be accurate for Georgia. Not somebody calling from, you know, setting up a phone bank script from Oregon calling into Georgia. That may not be what Georgia wants to hear.
As awesome as Oregonians are. Speaking as one. You know, I'm just aware of time. I want to be respectful to our panelists. I can't thank you all enough for the work that you do and for being such amazing partners. And it was an honor to have you on the call, as well as the folks who've already hopped off. And thank you so much to all the people who joined us. We have been recording this call. We are going to send a link to the recording out to everybody who RSVP'd for this meeting. And along with all of the links that we've been discussing the whole time on here, the slide deck presentation, everything that we've been talking about. So, you know, any other parting words, folks, before we close it out? All right.
Actually, I did hear Senator Schumer speak tonight about how that, you know, they've approved the transition for the Biden presidency. And there's really not a leg to stand on going forward for Trump. Not that he had one to begin with, but it's pretty much a done deal. And that's likely to maybe, you know, encourage some of the GOP to show up and vote in the Georgia election. That was what Senator Schumer was saying. Of course, we wouldn't depend on that because we're going to get out the vote and we're going to overwhelm them with Democratic votes. But just something to keep in the back of your mind.
It's good news.
It is good news.
Very good news. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I guess that's it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.